Do you notice the coolest thing about what's happening here? That's Olaf, Disney's newest robotic character, who can walk, balance, and emote just like he stepped out of the movie. But this free-roaming robot is also doing all of that on a moving, rocking, rotating boat. What? I flew to France to see Olaf up close, and watching him perform in this show on that boat melted my mind. I had to figure out how Imagineering pulled this off. So I asked them.
So it's actually an extremely challenging character to physically represent. It forced us to innovate at all levels.
That's Moritz Bächer, lab director of Disney's Robotics division in Zurich and one of the Imagineers responsible for bringing Olaf to life. I interviewed Moritz right after seeing Olaf to see if he would spill any of the secrets behind the snowman. And surprisingly, Moritz told me a lot. And I realized there's a lot that people don't understand about the Olaf animatronic. 7 things to be exact. And I'm going to clear these things up and share the secrets of how he actually works. Like how he's surprisingly similar to Neo from The Matrix, if he's self-aware, and the Star Wars Easter egg that makes all of this possible. I went into this interview wanting to learn how one robot works, but I came out of it with a different understanding of the future of Disney's parks. And each of these 7 myths that I'm about to debunk is key to seeing that future. So let's get to some Olaf animatronic myth busting, starting with something that I've gotten wrong twice in this video so far. Myth number 1, he's an animatronic. The truth is, he's not an animatronic. I've called Olaf a free-roaming animatronic roughly 1,000,000 times on this channel, so it was a little embarrassing when I said that to Moritz, and it turns out that's not right. Imagineering is making a technical distinction. Audio animatronics are bolted down and make repeated programmed movements within an attraction. But Olaf's mechanics are very different. He's very much not bolted down. He can self-balance, walk on his own, and moves in ways that are not exactly pre-programmed. More on that in a bit. So what is Olaf? Imagineering simply calls him a robot, or a robotic character, which is distinct and different from an animatronic. Now, I've been trying to get this right since I talked to Moritz, but I have 3 decades of muscle memory of saying animatronics, and animatronics is one of my favorite words ever. So if I mess up and say animatronic, just be ruthless with me in the comments. The next thing that people are getting wrong is a big one. Myth number 2, Disney used AI to replace humans. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, Disney uses AI to power Olaf, but there's so much artistry here. They didn't just write, "Do you want to build a snowman?" into ChatGPT. What makes Olaf possible is the use of a branch of AI called reinforcement learning. I talk about this in a lot more detail in my Future of Animatronics video, Future of Robots video. But in simple terms, with reinforcement learning, a machine learns like a human would. We're all driven by rewards. As a baby, you want a toy or you want a cookie, so you teach yourself to crawl and to walk through trial and error. You try, you fall a lot, you get better through experience, and finally you can walk on your own and grab that toy. With reinforcement learning, machines are also driven by rewards, and they teach themselves through trial and error too. And Disney's able to do all this training in simulation. So thousands of virtual Olafs taught themselves how to walk at the same time, meaning that he gets a decade of experience, a decade of that trial and error in just a couple of days. Basically, Olaf is Neo.
I know Kung Fu.
So Olaf uses AI to teach himself. But humans, the artists and the engineers, are still in charge of what he learns and how he moves. The Imagineers create specific policies that give the robot rewards in simulation. And Moritz explained to me what that reward actually is. It's just a number.
So a reward is actually gives you a number back. It's something quite simple. If that number is high, it's a high reward. If that number is low, then you don't follow artistic motion, for example, well enough. So then, you need to improve.
Robots are so simple, getting satisfaction in meeting from seeing a number get higher. Could you imagine doing that as a human? But Disney's goal with this anima robot is not efficiency like something you'd see from Boston Dynamics. They need it to feel like a character. Animators who worked on the Frozen films actually created reference animations for Imagineering to use in their reinforcement learning training. If Olaf does a movement that doesn't match the reference animation, he gets a low number. If Olaf kind of matches it, it's a medium number, and if he matches it exactly, he gets a reward with a high number. On the Imagination Skyway podcast, Moritz talked about an initial problem that they ran into. Olaf sounded like a robot clanking around. So they created a policy to make sure that Olaf took quiet steps. Because of things like ChatGPT, people associate AI with being a lazy shortcut. But it's a tool, and this shows how AI can be used by artists and engineers to make things that were just not possible before. But just because he's powered by AI, a lot of people are jumping to conclusions and saying he's AI controlled. Which brings me to the next thing that people are getting wrong. Myth number 3, he's autonomous. So if Olaf is AI powered, that must mean he's the autonomous, self-aware, huggable version of Skynet. And Judgment Day will be pretty adorable.
Come with me if you want to live.
But no, that's not how this works at all. Right now, Olaf is puppeteered, and this is something Moritz confirmed. Similar to when the BD droids first debuted, an operator is using a Steam Deck-like controller to drive where Olaf walks and trigger certain reactions and animations in real time. During the Celebration in Arendelle show on the boat, Olaf runs through a choreographed routine. But wait, what's the point of all that AI training if he's just remote controlled? The AI powers the animation engine, what makes Olaf balance, walk, and move all in character. It's running on a computer that's inside Olaf, in a location with a very technical term. I'll let the head of NVIDIA explain it so I don't get it wrong.
Because I gave you your computer, Jetson.
What's that?
Well, it's in your tummy.
So the puppeteer tells Olaf what to do. The computer with the AI-powered training tells Olaf how to do it. And if you think about it, it kind of is how your brain works. Your conscious mind thinks, hey, I want to walk to the other room. But then subconsciously, your brain fires off a whole series of systems that let you balance, take steps, and get to the other room without walking into the wall. So in a way, your consciousness is puppeteering your body. We're all just puppets, man. But Olaf might not always be puppeteered, and I think that's the goal. Imagineering is already working on giving the BD droids vision to make them more autonomous. Imagineering has said that will let them perform more continuously throughout the day, and this includes developing new AI techniques.
We again use reinforcement learning for that, and we train a so-called navigation policy. This is technology, again, that is agnostic to the characters, but Olaf will remain, for the time being, remotely operated.
But the key thing is that this isn't limited to the BD droids. They're building it in a way that they could also bring it to Olaf, and that has big implications for the future. More on that in a bit, but if you are interested in the future of theme parks, I have a whole series called Future World, where I look at the technology, the trends, and predict the tomorrow of Tomorrowland. So get subscribed so you don't miss that. Myth number 4, he has an AI voice. The Robo-Olaf is voiced by Josh Gad, the original voice of Olaf.
Hi everyone, I'm Olaf.
But there's been some confusion about how Olaf talks.
Hey, Olaf.
And you are...
When the robot was unveiled, Disney just said that he can talk to and interact with guests. And considering the emphasis on AI, a lot of people, including me, wondered if Olaf was going to use a combination of an LLM and an AI-generated voice trained on Josh Gad to let him talk to guests. After all, in 2024, Disney patented using LLMs in this exact way to have animatronics interact with guests. Turns out the answer is much simpler. Josh Gad recorded new lines for the Anima Olaf, both in the Celebration in Arendelle show where Gad sings new songs written by Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez,
I am a very sorry snowman, a very big sorry snowman.
And Disney confirmed the delightful fact that Gad even voices the French lines. And for the interactive part where Olaf walks around and talks to guests, Gad voiced a series of pre-recorded lines.
Hands down, this is the best day of my life.
Myth number 5, AI training these robots is melting the planet. Look, AI is controversial, and one of the biggest criticisms of AI is its environmental impact. Data centers powering products from OpenAI, Meta, Google, and Anthropic use massive GPUs that cost tens of thousands of dollars, and these data centers consume a lot of energy and a lot of water. The cost of RAM has skyrocketed because of how resource-intensive AI is right now, and a lot of that has to do with training the new models. So I've seen quite a few comments saying, hey, Olaf is AI, so he's bad for the environment. But the training that goes into the latest version of ChatGPT is very, very, very different than the training that Disney does for Olaf. And it shocked me how efficient Disney's training process is. Disney collaborated with NVIDIA and Google DeepMind to create Newton, an open-source GPU-accelerated physics engine, specifically built for robotics. And on top of Newton, Disney built their Camino simulator, where they can make a digital clone of Olaf's mechanics. And Star Wars fans will recognize Kamino as the planet from Attack of the Clones where Obi-Wan discovers the clone army. And another fun fact about Kamino, all of this started with the BDX droids. And Moritz's team got the inspiration by seeing them in the Book of Boba Fett. And Boba Fett's birthplace is Kamino.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
And that Attack of the Clones reference is even more apt because Imagineers can run thousands of parallel simulations across different environments and different characters on a single NVIDIA 4090 GPU. That's the same GPU that any consumer can buy, if they have a couple $1,000s and if it was ever in stock. But the bigger point is that this is a consumer-level GPU, a far cry from the enterprise GPUs found in AI data centers. According to Disney research, training Olaf to walk and animate took about 2 days on a 4090 GPU, meaning that training Olaf took about the same amount of energy that my nephew burns playing Arc Raiders in a weekend. And that training makes Olaf surprisingly capable. But a lot of people think myth number 6. He only works in a controlled environment. When they've brought Olaf out into the land, it's been behind a roped-off area. And he also appears in the show, which is scripted and predictable. But once again, this show is on a moving, rotating, rocking boat. And Olaf walks, turns around, and performs all while the boat is moving. Seeing this in person legitimately blew my mind. But when I posted about it on Instagram and TikTok, I found out that a lot of people are very skeptical. A few people said that it's not that impressive because the boats must be on a track or something. And I even saw people speculate that Disney is using magnets or a stick to keep Olaf in place. But, and I cannot emphasize this enough, this is a moving, rocking boat. You can see it swaying and rocking in the footage. And this can be affected by the wind. And I got one comment from someone who performed as a monkey in Phantasmic, which is the coolest possible thing you can have on your resume, in my opinion. And they said that, as a human, performing on the barge, moving on the water, even in a predictable pattern, was not easy. So this was my biggest question for Moritz going into our interview. How can Olaf perform the show on a boat? And it turns out the answer is, once again, reinforcement learning and simulation.
And so absolutely that's part of the training. So we vary the terrain and we apply disturbances. So for example, on a boat, think of the weather changing, right? So there could also be wind in Paris. Occasionally you have quite a bit of wind. We did thorough testing that this works under very severe conditions. It's still stably walking and balancing on a boat.
So was Moritz even a little bit worried when they put their new cutting-edge Olaf on a boat for the first time?
I was not nervous at all. So we do so much thorough testing. So I'm absolutely confident that the robot is being able to balance in such conditions.
The end result is there's a magical snowman robot singing on a boat while it rotates. One of the coolest things I've ever seen in a theme park. Yes, malfunctions will happen. We've all seen the video. They happen with animatronics too. I'm not saying that this will be perfect 100% of the time, but perfect isn't the point. Believability is. And I think Olaf is the most believable robotic character Disney has ever made. The tech melts away, and what's left is just the character. So if he's so capable, then why is Olaf showing up in the land in a roped-off area separated from guests? I think it's an operational limitation rather than a technical one. Olaf is extremely popular, and if he's just wandering around the land right now, there's going to be a rush of people surrounding him, which could get a bit chaotic. I think having Olaf be in a separated zone is as much for guest flow and guest comfort as it is for protecting Olaf. This gives guests a chance to see Olaf a bit easier. My hope is that as things move forward and roaming characters become the norm, they'll have more latitude to have Olaf wander throughout the land, because technically he's more than capable of it. And while I was editing this video, Disney confirmed it to Fast Company. Kyle Laughlin says you'll absolutely see him roaming in the park in the future, and that delivering a huggable moment through a meet and greet is their North Star. But that gets to another very common comment and complaint I get whenever I talk about these free roaming animatronic robots. Myth number 7, guests will never actually see him in the parks. I've seen so many comments that Olaf is just to hype the new land, and that they only roll out these robots for tech demos, shareholders, and media. And let's just ignore the fact that Olaf has already appeared in the world of Frozen for guests. In the show and in the land, it's not just for media. But I get so many comments and see so many tweets saying that he will be short-lived. This is just vaporware, just hype, and by making videos about this, I'm a sucker buying into it and selling false hope. And I mean, previous free-roaming characters like Lucky the Dinosaur, Muppet Mobile Labs, and Groot were all rare and only appeared for a limited time before free-roaming their way to a farm upstate somewhere. And this is where I have the strongest pushback, because I think that's just cynicism that ignores what's been happening over the last 3 years. Because the technology now is fundamentally different.
So the combination of simulation and reinforcement learning is truly what unlocked us to build these robots so quickly, within months now. It took years before.
Reinforcement learning has been around for decades, but with Newton and Camino, Disney can accomplish a tremendous amount of realistic physics simulations and training on a single GPU. Which not only means that the robots learn to walk quicker, but it's much less expensive for Disney to build these robots.
And it's also interesting that, with reinforcement learning and simulation, you can actually work with imperfect hardware. Previously, you had to have perfect hardware, expensive hardware, as we can do this with basically more off-the-shelf hardware, much, much faster.
And not only is it less expensive, but these characters are much quicker to make. The first free-roaming character, Lucky the Dinosaur, took 5 years to develop. Disney's 2 newest free-roaming characters, Herbie and Olaf, each took less than 5 months. Olaf in 4 months and Herbie in just 90 days. Add in the BD droids and there are 3 new free-roaming robotimatronics that guests have seen in person in the parks and on cruise ships over the last 3 years. I really don't think that Disney is going to take a technology that they are getting better at, while it is getting less expensive and faster to produce, and that people are really excited about seeing in person, and then go, well, let's do less of that actually, because that will be really tricky of us. That makes no sense to me. But I have to confess something. I've actually been really tricky in this video, because there's actually an 8th myth. Myth number 8. This video is just about Olaf. Really, it's about what characters come next. Because under his snowballs, Olaf looks very similar to the BD droids. His legs are asymmetric to fit under the snowball, but functionally they're very similar. And when I asked Moritz about autonomy in these characters, he made it very clear. The autonomous systems they are developing aren't just for the BD droids. They are building a platform that they can span across characters. The robotics, the simulation-based training, and the future autonomy. Everything I talked about here isn't specific to just Olaf. Olaf being able to walk on a boat or move like he does in the movies using RL and reference animations sets the blueprint for Disney to bring more characters to life in more places. And Moritz confirmed this. He told me that they are working on new robotic characters.
So we have lots of new things in the pipeline that I can't talk about yet. But we are going to keep innovating and bring characters basically to life in a believable, authentic way in the future.
Imagineering echoed that at the World of Frozen grand opening.
And this is really just the start. We're going to have more characters wandering our lands in the future.
And when Olaf appeared on stage with Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, this is what he said.
Could you imagine this? The future of Disneyland? All these robots, all these characters wandering around.
NVIDIA is a strategic partner in all of this. That wasn't just off the cuff. And that Fast Company article I mentioned has 2 very interesting quotes from Kyle Laughlin. The first is that their goal is to bring these robots everywhere, confirming that Olaf will come to domestic parks and cruise ships in the future. And second is that he said, our robotic characters and our animatronic characters are going to begin to merge. So I think we'll start to see some of this technology appear in attractions too. And maybe in the future, I don't have to worry so much about calling them animatronics. We'll see. Remember what I said at the beginning. I went into this wanting to learn how one robot works. What I learned is that Disney built a system to bring any character to life, faster and more capable than ever before. And the technology is only going to get better. Olaf isn't a one-off. He's a breakthrough, the next step in a future that I am very excited to see unfold. Because there are so many characters Disney could bring to life using this technology. And the next time Disney announces one, you can get the full scoop on this channel and in my free weekly newsletter, The Tip Board. It's weekly Disney intelligence sent to your inbox. Link below. But I want to know, what character do you hope Disney brings to life next as a free-roaming robot? Nailed it. Let me know in the comments. This has been James Grosh from Guide to WDW. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon.